Good evening, Surprise Christian Church. How are we? Good. And good morning, Surprise Christian Church. I'm so glad you guys have joined us. I'm Drew, lead pastor with Surprise Christian Church. And boy, has it been a week for me. It has been something special. First of all, Brad and I got to wrangle with the lovely matte floors this week, which seemed to have been just layers upon layers of glue to keep it down. I don't know what they did, but it is the most insane thing I've ever done in my life. I am so sore. I made fun of Brad because he brought knee pads like a grandpa. You know, he was afraid about his knees, and so I was making fun of him. And I woke up today barely able to walk. And I realized with age comes wisdom. And so I learned I learned a little bit of a lesson. But we fought those floors, and it was just something else. Speaking of which, if you are daring enough to want to come help us do that, not tomorrow, but next Sunday, the 25th, we're going to be back here. We meet for communion on Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock. I'd love for you to join us in that just in general. But on the 25th, we're going to meet for communion at 8. And after we do communion, we're going to go down to the Home Depot and rent a bunch of those floor strippers and just work together to get as much of this up as we can. And so if you're not doing anything Sunday the 25th, we could use all the help we can get. It is brutal, but it is good. It is good to be able to serve and do those things. And Brad and I had an awesome conversation with Ray, who's a good friend that we just ran into, and he offered to help because he was crazy, and I bet he's regretting that today. So Ray, if you're watching, thank you. Not only did we wrestle with the floors, but my cowboy is just a devastating week. It has been just a loss beyond words, and so I'm not even going to talk about it, but we're just going to move on from there. So it's been a week. Keep praying for me, please. I need it. We're going to keep going through the book of Revelation as we have been talking about the kingdom of God. We're in Revelation chapter 7 this week, starting into this section. But before we do that, we're going to get into the Psalms, as we do every week. And we are in Psalm 125 this weekend. It's a very short one, but I love to get to pray the Psalms over the service. And I just want to continue to invite you, if you don't know what to pray for, pray the Psalms. They are amazing prayers. And so Psalm 125, we're going to pray this over the service. It says this: "Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion. It cannot be shaken. It remains forever." Just sit in that for a second. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion. It cannot be shaken. It remains forever. The mountains surround Jerusalem, and the Lord surrounds his people, both now and forever. The scepter of the wicked, the reign of the wicked, the rule of the wicked, whatever you want to say there, will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous, so that the righteous will not apply their hands to injustice. So what do we do with that? He says, "Do what is good, Lord, to the good, to those whose hearts are upright. But as for those who turn aside to crooked ways, the Lord will banish them with the evildoers. Peace be with Israel." Pray with me. God, you're an awesome God and King. God, as we look at your kingdom through this series in Revelation, as we compare your reign to the reign of the nations, God, there is no comparison. God, for you rule with justice and with goodness, with mercy, and with kindness and compassion. God, and so often we see in this world with human nations, God, even smaller than that, just groups of people, God, families, whoever it is, God, what we see so often is injustice. What we see so often is wrongdoing. What we see so often is brokenness. What we see so often is abuse. God, may your kingdom come, Lord. That the world would no longer be in the hands of the unjust. That the world would no longer be in the hands of abusers. That the world would no longer be in the hands of those, God, who would harm your people. God, but that the world would be in your hands, as we know it is, Lord. God, that we would see you face to face, living in the kingdom of King Jesus, where all things are perfect. and all things are right. God bless your people. God bless Israel. God, those who you promised in Abraham, that they would be a blessing to the nations. God, turn their hearts to you, their Messiah, Lord Jesus. God, bless your people. God, those who have faith in your Son, that they would stand forever. God, we thank you and we glorify your name today. Amen. All right. Revelation chapter 7 is where we're at. Before we get started today, I have two little stories from my life. As you guys know, from my great love for the Dallas Cowboys, I lived in Dallas for several years. I had most of my formative experiences as a young man in Dallas. I graduated high school there. I went to college there, had my first girlfriend there, had my first job there. Most of the things that you remember about your youth happened for me in Dallas. But the reality is I actually grew up here in Arizona. And, it's never been my favorite place in the world. All our teams are bad. The weather's bad. Just everything about it is bad. No, I'm just joking. I won't hate that much, but it's got some benefits, mainly the sunrise and sunset. That's the most amazing thing in Arizona. Well, the people, that's questionable, but, Yeah, my Cowboys play the Cardinals. I almost forgot. I don't want to talk too much smack. It'll get ugly again. Nonetheless, I grew up in Dallas, and what was strange, what was so different, moving from Arizona to Dallas is seasons, right? Because here in Arizona, we have one season hot, right? And that's it. That's all we get, especially this year with our record-breaking 100-degree days over and over and over again. We have one temperature, burning hot. And so more people come to know the Lord here because they want to avoid heat, in the long term. And so it's a great place for church. But nonetheless, there's seasons in Dallas, right? There's fall. Wow, what a concept. The trees change and the weather changes and it's beautiful. And there's spring and winter finally starts to break and there's no more snow. And it's wonderful. The seasons come and things change. But one of the parts of Dallas that is certainly, I will say, not as ideal is tornadoes, right? Tornadoes. And that was bizarre for me. Experiencing my first tornado in Dallas was something else, because in Arizona, we may not have any weather, but we also don't have the disasters that come with weather, right? And so I remember in high school, I experienced my first tornado coming through the town that I lived in. And there's these massive towers that have these alarms basically on them that are just so loud. And I encourage you, if you want to know, just go to YouTube and type in tornado warning siren and listen to it for a second, and you'll realize just how terrifying that sound is. I don't know who picked that, but it's like the worst horror movie alarm sound that could be imagined. I mean, it is awful. And I remember in high school, all of a sudden, I was at lunch, and this sound just goes off, and everybody knows what it is, and we actually had one right next to the school, so it was super loud, and immediately the panic over all the students' faces of, I know what that means, right? And our teachers, they rushed really quickly. And then when I was in school, about 3,000 students, and so they did staggered lunches where you'd have a certain number of students in each lunch. We were the first lunch of the day. And I remember the teachers just panicking and stuffing us all into classrooms across the hall. And they do all these trainings, right, in schools of like emergency situations, but no one ever pays attention, right? And so as soon as something actually happens, no one follows the rules. But the one thing everybody remembered was get under a desk. That is like the rule, right? That's supposed to save you from whatever is coming. But at the classroom across from the lunchroom, they didn't really think it through all that well, because the desks were not individual desks, but they were desks running along the wall, right? And so what happened was is you have all these students getting shoved in this classroom and fighting over whether or not we could stuff ourselves in the corners of this room under the desks against the wall. And I remember all of this happening. At the time, because I'm a bad student, just if you're a student here, don't ever follow my example, please. I was a bad student, just warning ahead of time. I was doing my physics homework, which was my next class, at lunch, because I would just procrastinate until right before, and I was sitting at lunch doing my physics homework, and all of a sudden the alarms go off, and so now I'm in this classroom. There's a tornado busting through. I've abandoned my lunch. I can't do my physics homework. I'm stuck in this room. I have to go to the bathroom, by the way, because you don't think about that until after you're stuck in a classroom. I'm body to body with students. There's one on my left, one on my right. We're squeezed in like this. I have my knees up to my chest, and there's 4 other students in front of me because we're so layered in to this thing. And I actually got all the way in the back against the wall under the desk. So anyway, we're sitting there. The alarm's going off. All this is happening. And then guess what happens? The power goes out. That's what happens in tornadoes, right? And guess what happens after that? Panic. Everybody in the classroom screams just as loud as they can. I don't know what it is about students or whoever that in a scary situation we just scream as loud. I don't know what, but it definitely amplified the stakes. The power is out. People are screaming. We're stuck in this thing. And then you hear it, right? The sound of a train basically rolling your direction. And that is the sound that a tornado makes. And I just remember this feeling in this moment. I just was like, I could die. This could be it. But what is all this going to do? I'm stuck in the dark. I'm under this stupid desk. If this ceiling falls, this desk isn't going to save me. I'm trapped in this room with all these other people. If things fall down, now we're all trapped in a room together, body to body, with no air to breathe. And I just remember sitting there going, this is just terrible. It's just terrible. If I'm going to die in a tornado, this room is not going to save me. I could have stopped in that moment and prayed or asked God for safety or anything. I just didn't. I just sat in the room kind of accepting my fate. Like this was it. I was going to die in a classroom. And it just sticks with you. I find it interesting when we think about the story in Revelation we're about to read, that in life we do the same thing. We know that death is coming at some point. But we have this habit of just focusing on everything around us, just the circumstances that seem to be just whatever they are in your life. You know that things are going badly or well or whatever, and you don't really focus on that impending doom that's coming. Instead, you focus on all the things that are right in front of you in the moment, and that was the exact feeling. My second tornado story is a little bit different. So I survived, obviously. I'm here. We lived. The tornado didn't devastate the school. It actually went by us, and so everything was fine. My second tornado story was actually at work. At the time, I worked fast food. It was my first job, and I was working at Whataburger, and my job was to work the outside lane in the Whataburger. And so we actually have one like that here in Arizona. If you go down Bell, there's 2 lanes out there. It's called the B lane. I work the outside lane. And so my job was just to sprint out in the summer heat, back and forth from car to car and then back. I was in such good shape, and I miss those days, but that's okay. I remember I was working out, and then this tornado siren goes off again. Same familiar feeling of what happened last time. But there was a little bit of a difference between the first story and the last story. I went inside thinking, okay, my manager's got a plan, right? I know the protocol. We're all supposed to get in the freezer, which, man, that would suck if that actually happened. But that was supposed to be the plan because the freezer's the safe spot. But instead of saying, yeah, let's do it, let's stuff in the freezer, I get inside and he said, oh, it's not that bad out there. It's not that bad outside. I know the siren's going off, but it's fine. Keep the lane open. Drew, I need you to go out there and keep working out there. Keep delivering food because there's still people in line. The exact opposite response, right? And you would think my earlier feeling of, man, this building wasn't going to save me would apply here. I should be so confident, right? I'm going out there. The building's not going to help me anyway. But no, I wanted to be in that freezer more than anything, right? But here I was. And my sense of responsibility took over. And I had to go out there. I felt like I would lose my job if I didn't. And so I go out there running around in this tornado. The wind gets so bad. At one point, a stop sign just rips out of the ground right across the street. And it flies my direction because most people in tornadoes, they die from shrapnel, not from the tornado itself. It ripped out of the ground. That's how bad it was. It ripped out of the ground and flew my direction and slammed against the Whataburger, right past me, just slammed into the wall. And I went inside and I said, I am never stepping outside again. Fire me, do whatever you got to do. I'm not going out there again. I'm getting in the freezer until this is over. I read this passage in Revelation we're going to read today, and I just can't help but feel that we don't really understand the feeling of what's going on. Last week we talked about this great day of wrath has come. The people are begging the mountains to fall on them. They see this doom coming. And we talked about how those who flee to the Lord, that they will be saved. Even in this moment, that those who turn to Jesus, they will have refuge. They will have a freezer to hide in, so to speak. They will have a place to go. But I get this feeling sometimes in both stories. Number one, that we focus on all the wrong things. That we focus on all the details of life, all the circumstances of life, and we avoid the reality of what's coming. Or number two, as Christians, a lot of the time we have a tendency to be like my manager and choose to toss people out while we stay in. Choose to toss people out while we stay in. And the reality is we should want everybody to come to know Christ because the tornado is ripping through. It will come someday. And we want everyone to know Jesus so that they will be saved. Revelation chapter 7, let's do it. Starting in verse 1. It says this, after this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, restraining the 4 winds of the earth so that no wind can blow on the earth or on the sea or on any tree. Then I saw another angel rising up from the east who had the seal of the living God. He cried out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who were allowed to harm the earth and the sea. Don't harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we seal the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the Israelites. 12,000 sealed from the tribe of Judah, 12,000 from Reuben, 12,000 from Gad, 12,000 from Asher, 12,000 from Naphtali, 12,000 from Manasseh, 12,000 from Simeon, 12,000 from Levi, 12,000 from Issachar, 12,000 from Zebulun, 12,000 from Joseph, and 12,000 from Benjamin. Lots of numbers there. So let's go through it. We really have 2 sections here in this passage. The first section is these angels holding back the winds of the earth, as my paper tries to fly away. Holding back the winds of the earth. They know this moment is coming. They have been given permission by God. You guys are the ones who are going to eventually let it go. Let the winds go and let the wrath rain in on the earth. But they know that there's a perfect time for this moment. And so until then, they're holding back these winds. We hear 4 corners of the earth. And just to hit this debate really quickly, this does not mean the earth is flat, just to let you know. All right, I just want to communicate that. If you were leaning on this for your understanding of how the earth is shaped, please don't. Listen in your science classes. Anyway, what does this mean? Well, throughout the Bible, this type of imagery is used. It's really just discussing the whole earth. And I just want you to think of it in our context like north, south, east, and west. Right? If we said an angel was stopping the wind from the north and from the south and from the east and the west, that's the 4 corners, right? It's the whole earth being pictured here. So the angels are preventing this destruction upon the earth until God says it's time. And then we see these numbers of 12,000 adding up to 144,000. And there are so many debates around this topic, and so I don't even want to begin to start to fight those out or argue about those. I don't know where you're at in that. I just encourage you to read the passage carefully. I'm just going to give my perception here, and you do what you want with it, if that's okay with you guys. So there's much debate about it. Is this ethnic Israel, right? Are these Israelites, 12 tribes of Judah, or 12 tribes of Israel here? Are they symbolic of the whole church? Who are these people? First thing I want to point out, this list is completely unique in the Bible. Nowhere else in the Bible will it give you a list like this, where there's this exact order of people and where each person is in their place, because there's actually some substitutions and some moving around here. For example, this is not the 12 sons of Jacob we're used to, because Dan is omitted and Manasseh is included, right? This is not representative of those who would possess the land, because Levi is included. And if you know your Old Testament, you know Levi is the tribe of priests, and they didn't get a plot of land in the promised land. Instead of Joseph, we have his son Ephraim listed. The list also abandons the typical order. We have Judah, the tribe of kings, the tribe that Jesus will come from, is listed first instead of Reuben, who is the firstborn son.
My apologies.
My watch is trying to hear my sermon. My apologies as well. The sons of the 2 concubines in the story in the Old Testament of Abraham, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali, instead of being listed in the end, they're actually listed up front, right? Which is super weird. My personal theory there is the first will be last and the last will be first, right? In the end here, God's switching the roles. So all this signals the main message of the passage. Who are God's people? This passage is just weird. There's so many different things in the Bible. So the question becomes, who are these people? Who are the people God is sealing? I just want to remind you of an earlier passage, right? We talked about Revelation chapter 5. When we talked about who could open the seals of the scroll. What did John experience? He heard, look, the Lion from the tribe of Judah. Remember this part of the story, right? He's the one who's worthy to open the scrolls. And he turns and he sees what? Does he see a lion? No. He sees a lamb who was slain, right? He says, here, look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He sees the lamb. What happens here? John hears, seal, the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe, and he hears this list. Pastor Brian's going to hit this sermon next week, but I'm going to spoil a little bit of it. This first verse is what he sees. He turns and sees what? After this, I look, and behold, a great multitude that no one can number from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages standing before the throne and the Lamb. In both passages, what is heard and what is seen is both true. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's also the Lamb that was slain. God's people are ethnic Israel. That's still true today. God has not abandoned his people who he has promised. Instead, God's people are both ethnic Israel and the rest of the world, the nations, the people. So he hears and then he sees. Both are true. So what's happening here? You see, one side is what we expect to see or to hear. You see, the expectations of the Messiah, he's going to be this king who's going to reign on the earth, and he's going to unify the nation of Israel, and he's going to reign in the promised land, and this is the expectation, and so that's what John hears, and then he turns and he sees something so beyond expectation. A lamb that was slaughtered. Not a king, but a lamb that was slain. The expectation is that God's going to save his people, Israel. He's going to save his people. That's the expectation, and John hears that expectation, then he turns and he sees what? So much more than that, right? All the nations of the world. Let's grab onto that as we go into our lessons for disciples. Here's the first thing I want you to take away from the story today. The Lord protects and saves his people. It's a simple one, but one we really need to think about. We should be encouraged to know that God is in complete control. His people will only experience the events that he allows to happen in the timing he allows them to happen. Boy, do we need that today. When I was experiencing my first tornado, the right response would have been to put my trust in God that he was going to do whatever it is he was going to do. And if that was to save me and protect me, that I could pray and beseech him to do so, that he would do it because he's powerful enough, he's strong enough, he's able enough. Instead, I was so distracted by my circumstances that I just let whatever was going to happen. We should be encouraged to know that God is in complete control. He is the one holding back the winds, right? Till his perfect timing is set up. But we have a part to play in this. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. I just want to read this to you and encourage you in this because our world needs this right now. It says this, in addition, brothers and sisters, pray for us, that the word of the Lord may spread rapidly and be honored just as it was with you. And that we may be delivered from wicked and evil people, for not all have faith. But the Lord is faithful. He will strengthen you and guard you from the evil one. We have confidence to the Lord about you that you are doing and will continue to do what we command. May the Lord direct your hearts to God's love and Christ's endurance. I want you to notice something. The Apostle Paul is fully and completely confident that the Lord will protect his people. Do you hear that? I know the Lord will protect you from the evil one. He will do it. But what does he say right before that? Pray for us, brothers and sisters. Not all have faith. There are evil and wicked people out there. There are things out there that could bring harm to us. Pray that the gospel would spread, right? He has full confidence in what God can do. But he tells his brothers and sisters in the church in Thessalonica, pray that he would do it. Please. Pray on our behalf that God would do it. He's powerful enough. He's strong enough. He can. He will. But please pray for us. I said last weekend, you want to know where your walk is, how often do you pray? What does your prayer life look like? You want to know where you're at with Jesus, just look at the way you pray. It's as easy as that. You know with 100% certainty, based on your prayer life, exactly where you're at in your relationship with God. It's just like your relationship with your spouse. If you don't speak to your spouse at all, where's your relationship at? If you don't even want to hang out with your spouse, you don't even want to be in the same room, you're so not interested in that, where's your relationship at? You know. But we look with God and we're like, yeah, I'll talk to you every once in a while, but our relationship's good. It's all good. No. Wherever your prayer life's at, that's exactly where your walk with God is. Exactly. Squarely, right there. And I need you guys to pray. The world needs you to pray. We should be encouraged that God is in complete control, just like he is in our story. But the reality is, with the circumstances we're facing, with COVID, with the political stuff, with all of this mess we're facing, the world needs you to pray. The world needs you to pray that God would open a door for the gospel. The world needs you to pray that God would protect his people. The world needs you to pray that God would turn people's hearts towards him. The world needs you to pray. And I'm not saying go pray for yourself. As Christians, we love to pray for ourselves. Let me pray when my circumstances are bad and I'm focusing on all the wrong things. Let me pray just for my own health and my own safety, or my parents' health, or my friends' health, or my kids' health, or my family's health, or our money, or whatever it is. Let me pray for the stuff in my life. No, pray for this world. People need you to pray. People need you to pray. And the reality is, you need to hear this from me today, when you don't pray, things that could have happened don't. I don't know if we believe that in the church, but it's the truth. When you don't go before God and you don't pray, things he was waiting to pour out, blessings he was waiting to give, things he was waiting to do, and he was trusting in your faithfulness as his son and daughter to come to him. You didn't pray, it didn't come. And so there's reality to this too. When we fail to pray, things happen in this life that could have been prevented had we sought God first. I believe that's true. And yet my confidence is that the Lord is always faithful and always does what is right. He doesn't need us, but he wants us to join him in this. I need you to pray. Here's the second thing I want you to take away from this story. God shatters our expectations. God shatters our expectations. I want to just hit some things because I think they're just so telling of this, right? The Jewish people, of all people, the Pharisees in Jesus' day in particular, knew the Word of God top to bottom. If you were to pick out somebody who just studied the Scripture inside and out and knew it all, they would be them. I mean, they are amazing when it comes to the Word of God, and yet so many of them missed the Messiah, and it's like, what in the world happened? And the reason is because they had an expectation, and the expectation wasn't being fulfilled, even if the expectation wasn't necessarily the whole picture. But God shatters our expectations. Let me give you an example of this. You guys know the story of Jesus coming into Jerusalem on a donkey. You guys know this story, right? It's prophesied in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. It talks about the king coming in on the colt of a donkey. And so this was a good expectation. The Jews before the time of Jesus had full expectation that the Messiah would come in on a donkey. But then there's this other passage in Daniel chapter 7 that talks about the Son of Man. And does he come in on a donkey? No, what does he come on? Do you know? He comes in on the clouds, right? He comes in on the clouds, much like we see in Revelation. And so here's what happened. The Jews got together, some of them, and they started to theorize, some of these groups, and they thought there might be two Messiahs. Messiah, son of David, and Messiah, son of Joseph. One would come on a donkey, the other would come on the clouds, right? But it's not two Messiahs, it's two comings of the same Messiah. And if you talk today to Orthodox Jewish people, one of their biggest problems is they will say to you, the reality is the Old Testament does not say that the Messiah will come twice. They'll say the Messiah is supposed to come once. He's supposed to accomplish all the things he was said to accomplish. We can't accept Jesus because he hasn't done it all. And you see how they've missed, based on the perspective, they missed the full picture. We talked about how the Messiah was believed to save ethnic Israel. If you just go read the New Testament and look at the apostles' reaction, like Peter, right, in Acts, in the early stages, when God comes to him and says, go to these Gentiles, Cornelius and his household's coming to you. Look him in, and he's like, I don't want them in here, right? Like that. No. And God works on him and breaks down that expectation and brings him to realize that God is doing more than just saving Israel, but he's saving the nations. I'm not saying this to bash on anybody or their understanding. I'm saying that we should learn a lesson. God shatters expectations. God shatters expectations. No matter what you think you know about the Bible, God's going to shatter your expectations, I promise. He almost always does. Because we're flawed and we get hooked on things and we just focus so much in on them, and he just breaks it apart. That's what we see in these two Revelation passages. He hears something, the expectation. He sees something else, but both are true. Here's the third thing. Given the fact that God shatters expectations, and this is where we'll close, do not think you have it all figured out, but expect the unexpected. Do not think you have it all figured out, but expect the unexpected. Much like I was sitting at lunch and I thought I had my life figured out. I'm going to take this physics homework. I'm going to get it done at lunch. I got plenty of time. I'll be able to go to the bathroom whenever I want, so I'm not going to think about that, right? I'm going to eat my meal after I cram all this homework. None of that happened because God shatters expectations, right? Expect the unexpected. I didn't get to eat that day, by the way. I didn't add that part of the story. Went straight into physics class. Didn't get my homework done, didn't eat, and still had to go to the bathroom. So there's that, We should expect the unexpected. I think this is just so true right now in this situation because in the season we're in, we may be suffering and battling, but how do we know that God is not using our experience to bring others to himself, right? The COVID pandemic was such an unexpected thing for all of us. Just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, our lives are completely different today. And I just wonder if we've thought about the possibility that God does the unexpected sometimes in our life and he causes things to happen we don't understand, but maybe we shouldn't be so focused on ourselves, but we should be focused on the possibility that God might be doing this for somebody else. It's possible. Nothing slips past God, right? We just established that. God allows things to happen in his timing. They're always perfect. What's to say that God didn't allow the circumstances that we're facing exactly so that he might bring someone to know him? And yet, all too often, I see Christians all over social media do nothing but complain about the circumstances we're in. Do nothing but bemoan the state of our country or the world or masks or whatever other nonsense we want to talk about. Maybe, just maybe, we should just trust God in his timing and pray that people would be saved through this pandemic. It's possible. Wouldn't our lives be so much better if we didn't just spend all our time complaining about the way things are, but instead prayed that God would change them or use them? I bet it would. Second thing I want you to take away from this, do not think you'll have it all figured out. Expect the unexpected is this. We don't have permission to open or close the gates of heaven on anybody. We don't get to determine who's saved and who isn't. That's something I just need you to hear today because, man, it's just so crazy. I saw a pastor just this last week. I saw his sermon. He got up there and he said, if you vote for Joe Biden, I just want to let you know you're going to hell. He's like, I'm certain. And he started listing all the things Joe Biden supports, and I'm not trying to argue for one or the other. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just simply saying that his statement was simple. You vote for Joe Biden, I know you're not saved, and you're on your way to hell. And I just want to say to him, are you God? Do you have permission to close the gates of heaven? I assure you, you don't. I assure you, you don't. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 says this, a person should think of us in this way as servants of Christ and managers of the mysteries of God. In this regard, it is required that managers be found faithful. Verse 3, I repeat this with Paul. Hear me today. It is of little importance to me that I should be judged by you or by any human court. In fact, I don't even judge myself. For I'm not conscious of anything against myself, but I'm not justified by that. It's the Lord who judges me. So do not judge anything prematurely before the Lord comes, who will both bring to light what is hidden in darkness and reveal the intentions of the heart, and then praise will come to each one from God. Hear me on this. God saves, you don't. God is the King of heaven, you aren't. God is the judge, you're not. So often God loves and we don't. So often God has compassion and we don't. So often God shows mercy and we're mad about it. Like Jonah in the story, right? If you've read it before, he says to God, I don't know if you guys know this, by the way. Jonah's the only successful prophet in the Old Testament. Did you know that? If you're looking at just conversions. If you go read the Old Testament and you read how amazing the faith was of some of these guys, I mean, some guys had to lay on the ground for days. I'm talking and not eat or drink anything to symbolize the way God felt about Israel. You got some guys marrying prostitutes to show that Israel was unfaithful to God. Just the stuff they experienced and the amount of faithfulness they had to have. And most of the time, not one convert, not one person comes to know the Lord. But they did their job faithfully, step by step. The story of Jonah is a guy who's supposed to be a prophet. He's not faithful at all. God forces his hand. He makes him get swallowed by a giant fish just so he does his job. A whole city turns to God through Jonah. He's the only successful prophet in the whole Old Testament. And guess what that story ends with? God, I knew you would save them. That's why I didn't want to come. I hate these people. Why would I want you to save them? But so often, that's exactly who we are. And yet we're seeing in this passage that God saves. He seals those who are his. And the expectation was that might have been ethnic Israel, but the reality was that was all the nations as well. God saves. This doesn't mean it's not that we shouldn't warn people when we perceive they're living in rebellion and we want them to come to know Jesus. We definitely should. I've talked about that for several weeks. It just means we shouldn't pronounce final judgment on anyone. It's not our job. You do not have permission from the Lord to ever say to any human being in your entire life, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, I know for certain you're going to hell. You don't have permission. God has not said that's your job. And when you do that, you usurp God's authority. And you may turn someone's heart and say to them, you can't be saved, you're going to hell, I know it, and they just turn away from God completely right then and there. Because you decided you were God and God's not good enough, and so you had to do his job for him. Don't ever in your life say to somebody, I know you're going to hell. Don't do it. That's God's prerogative, not yours. Your job is to preach the gospel and let God move the hearts and make the judgment. I love this quote from John Newton. I read it this week on Twitter, and this is where I'm going to end. I love this passage. If I ever reach heaven, I expect to find 3 wonders there. To meet some I had not thought to see there. Second, to miss some I had expected to see there. And third, the greatest wonder of all, to find myself there. Oh man, that moved my heart so much this week. I just want you guys to take away this from this message. Let God be God. Serve him, love him. Pray that he would move. Live out the gospel, but let him be God. Let him choose the timing of the circumstances of our lives. Let him be in control of what happens and what doesn't. Let him be the judge. Let God be God. And you be a servant that you're called to be of the gospel and of the King. And pray, please. Let me say this more than anything. If you really believe someone's lost, you better be praying for them. Before you ever sing a single word to them, you better be praying for them. And then you better approach with the Holy Spirit just with such a loving attitude that you want them to know Christ. In my church, I don't want to ever hear somebody in my church on social media or anywhere else that's doing nothing but spewing hate in people's direction for whatever reason. I want to hear that you guys are praying for people to be saved. Because at the end of the day, judgment is coming. God's kingdom is coming. All things will be made new. And we want all of the people of the world to be those who belong in the sealed. The people that belong to God. For the final judgment is going to get just all that much more harsh over the next few weeks, I assure you. But the beautiful truth is God saves. God saves. Pray with me. Lord Jesus, God, that you would help us see. That you would help us just to trust you. God, just as simple as that. That we would realize we're not in control, but you are. God, that we would seek you first, that we would pray that you would move. God, that we would see your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God, that we would pray for the lost of this world, not condemn them to final judgment. God, that we would seek out the gospel to be spread everywhere. God, because I know with certainty there are many today that I am blind to, that I am so sure in my broken heart that they are saved, that they're going to heaven, and in reality they don't know you at all. God, take off my blinders, that I would someday get to heaven and that everyone I expect to be there is there. God, take off my blinders, Lord, that the people I have so wrongly condemned and cast out of your kingdom, but that really belong to you, that you would open my eyes, that I would see them and love them as you do. That I would call them brother and sister as they are. And God, most of all, I ask that you preserve our hearts. For the greatest surprise of all is to find out that I someday will be there too. Some days that's hard to believe. But I know you save, and I don't. And even when I condemn myself, Lord, you still say, you are my son. God, we love you. I pray this in your name, the name of King Jesus. Amen.